Learning outcomes. By the end of this module, you should be able to state when spoilage commences, identify what causes spoilage, give reasons why the rate of spoilage varies, and name the various forms of preservation. Natural decomposition commences at varying rates immediately food is harvested or slaughtered or taken from the sea. Food is spoiled once it is undesirable to eat, and enzymes produced by bacteria, molds and yeast. Spoilage may be caused by bacteria, for example Pseudomonas, molds and yeasts. They're able to tolerate high pH and low AW. Autolytic enzymes, for example proteolytic enzymes, these break down proteins. These tenderize the meat, which is why it's better to hang beef for at least 2 weeks after slaughter, although the better cuts of meat are hanged for at least 21 to 28 days for a better flavour and more tenderness. Another cause of food spoilage is over-ripening, and these are caused by autolytic enzymes. Enzymic browning, for example apple and potato brown on damaged or cut surface. Biochemical changes, for example staling of bread. When dough is baked, the starch grains absorb water, then swell and soften. Occurs when individual starch molecules no longer have the ability to retain water and become crystalline and hard. Physical damage, for example bruising and ice formation. Tainting. Foods, especially fatty foods, can absorb smells, especially if they're kept for long periods, say in the freezer. Insects and vermin. Stored products, here insects may be a problem. Other problems include parasites, for example liver fluke, trichinella and Echinococcus granulosus. Trichinella is a particular problem with pork and with horseflesh. It's a parasite that actually lives within the muscle joints of these two animals, and it's a reason why Jews don't eat pork, because it's classed as unclean because of this parasite. That's why it's best not to eat undercooked pork, because you could ingest the eggs or the parasite itself, and they in turn via your bloodstream could go into your joints, into your muscle joints, and possibly cause a heart attack. So be careful, as I say, with undercooked pork. That must be cooked to at least 75 degrees Celsius core temperature. Other cuts of meat you can undercook, for example with beef, duck and lamb, but pork is a no-no. There are various signs of food spoilage. These include off odours, discoloration, slime or stickiness, the presence of mould, texture change, taste deterioration, pest evidence, rancidity or oxidization, blown cans or packs, and the production of gas. The rate of spoilage is affected by the way in which the food is handled and stored. Don't forget about the conditions required for microbial growth. Factors affecting the rate include the age and condition of the food, temperature the food is kept at, number and type of organisms present, the type of food, the damage present, the competition, the acid-alkali balance, the available water, the atmosphere, presence or absence of oxygen, and the presence of preservatives. Spoilage can be delayed by satisfactory storage, for example dry, chilled or frozen. Molds are one form of food spoilage. Molds are chlorophyll free. They produce thread-like filaments called hyphae. They form a branched network of mycelium. The optimum growth temperature is between 20 and 30 degrees Celsius. They can grow as low as minus 10 degrees Celsius. They're aerobic, so they need oxygen in order to multiply. High humidities and fluctuating temperatures assist growth. They affect most foods. Normally mouldy food is unfit for human consumption. Stock rotation and best before dates are important. Some moulds, such as Aspergillus flavus, can produce mycotoxins, which are poisonous. Moulds can come in various colours. Black spot is Cladosporium, white spot Sporotrichum, green and blue Penicillium, pink, which is not on the slide, is Monilia, and whiskers, which is Muco. Yeast is another food spoilage organism. They are microscopic fungi. They reproduce by budding. The majority prefer acid foods of a pH between 4 and 4.5. A reasonable level of moisture is required. Many grow in high concentrations of sugar and salt. The growth range is 0 degrees Celsius to 47 degrees Celsius, the optimum between 25 and 30 degrees Celsius. Most are aerobic, so they require oxygen, and they're obligate and facultative. Many are used in food manufacture, and some cause spoilage. And further, some spoilage bacteria include Lactobacillus, Micrococcus, Clostridium, Pseudomonas, Acinetobacter, Achromobacter, Flavobacterium, and Bacillus. Some harmless changes on food, which appears to be spoilage or mold growth, include salmon, where you can get a build-up of struvite crystals. This is ammonium magnesium phosphate. With grapefruit, you've got Neringan crystals. This gives the grapefruit a bitter taste and normally comes as white spots. Another harmless change is that which you'll find with mandarins, which is something called hesperidin, which appear as white spots. Preservation is the treatment of food to prevent or delay spoilage or growth of pathogens. The different types of preservation techniques include high temperature preservation, such as pasteurization, sterilization, ultra-heat treatment, UHT, cooking and canning. Then you've got low temperature preservation, just above freezing, at freezing or below freezing. You've got the reduction in moisture, which relies upon the water activity or the available water. This can be accomplished by sun drying, artificial drying, accelerated freeze drying. Also the use of chemicals, the use of salt for example, and sugar, both reduces the availability of water. This is achieved by the salt and sugar actually absorbing the moisture from the food by a process called osmosis. Also the use of nitrates or nitrites for curing meat. These help to retain the colour and reduce the spoilage. Sulfur dioxide is used as an antioxidant. This inhibits mold and bacterial growth. And you'll see these, especially sulfites, a lot in wine and ciders. Pickling, acidification, the use of acetic acid or vinegar and lactic acid. The use of antibiotics such as niacin for cheeses and canned foods, although these are strictly controlled. The use of fermentation, which reduces the pH of the product. For example, salami, yogurt, bread and soy sauce. Controlled atmospheres, using different amounts of air, oxygen, nitrogen and carbon dioxide. Then there's two different types of smoking. There's hot smoking, and hot smoked food is in effect cooked, so it should be treated as high risk. Cold smoked foods such as smoked salmon, this should be treated as raw. Smoked products should be stored under refrigeration, especially if in vacuum packs, because of the risk of Clostridium botulinum. And lastly, irradiation, another form of food preservative. Survival of the organism depends on the initial numbers, the strain of the organism, the time and temperature used, the pH and the AW of food. Pasteurization. Here a relatively low temperature and time is used. For example, milk 72 degrees Celsius for 15 seconds. Liquid egg is heated to 64.4 degrees Celsius for 2.5 minutes. Pasteurization destroys pathogens and some spoilage bacteria. There's a shorter shelf life on this product, and there's a slight reduction in vitamins and nutritional value. Sterilization destroys all microorganisms. The product is heated to 100 degrees Celsius for a suitable time. There's a prolonged shelf life, but there's a greater loss in nutrition and vitamins, and there's a noted texture and flavour change. UHT, or ultra heat treatment, or treated. This is where the product is heated for 135 degrees Celsius for 1 second. The product will keep several months unopened without refrigeration, but as soon as the product is opened it must be treated as fresh and refrigerated. It destroys all microorganisms. There's less nutritional, vitamin and flavour problems than in sterilisation. And lastly, cooking. Cooking to a core temperature of 75 degrees Celsius. In the canning industry, they use a process called botulinum cook. This is classed as commercially sterile, and the product is heated to 121 degrees Celsius for 3 minutes. This destroys all microorganisms, toxins and spores, especially Clostridium botulinum spores. Therefore, the reason why it's called a botulinum cook. The canning process consists of several stages. First of all, raw materials. These are inspected, washed, peeled, prepared, blended, sieved, and any foreign bodies removed. Inspection, including metal detection of magnets, and the use of operatives who remove physical contamination from food on an illuminated inspection belt. This is followed by can washing, filling, sealing to create a vacuum and coating of can, processing using a botulinum cook, using retorts, hydrostatic pressure vessels or horizontal cookers, cooling in chlorinated water, drying, labelling, casing and coding and shrink wrapping, followed by storage and distribution for sale. Once the product is canned, it still remains an ideal medium for bacterial growth. It's imperative that anaerobic pathogens and spoilage bacteria that can multiply at normal ambient storage are destroyed. The closure of the can precludes the entry of microorganisms, but great care is taken post-process to avoid cross-contamination, especially when wet. Clostridium botulinum, this is the most heat-resistant pathogen. Canning time and temperatures are based on the destruction of spores. Botulinum cook, which we've already seen, is 121 degrees Celsius core temperature for a minimum of 3 minutes. The probability of spores surviving that is 1 in 1012. Bacteria multiply at a pH above 4.5. Vegetables are above 4.5, for example low acid foods. Fruits are below 4.5 and subjected to reduced process temperatures. Large catering cans of ham are pasteurized, therefore these need to be stored under refrigeration. Types of containers include rigid containers such as cans and jars, semi-rigid such as shallow containers with heat seal lids, often made of plastic or aluminium, flexible, for example laminated plastic films bonded to aluminium foil, and lastly aseptic packaging, for example fruit juice and milk. Refrigeration is a means of delaying food spoilage. Spoilage organisms can multiply under refrigeration. These are mainly psychrophiles, and these are Pseudomonas, Acinetobacter, Flavobacterium and Listeria. Also molds including Penicillium, Mucor and Cladosporium. Enzyme action continues at a reduced level. Most common food poisoning and foodborne disease organisms are incapable of multiplication or toxin formation under 5 degrees Celsius. Some psychotropic pathogens are capable of growth and or toxin formation below 5 degrees Celsius. These include Yersinia enterocolytica 1 degree Celsius, Listeria monocytogenes 0 degrees Celsius, and Aeromonas hydrophila 1 degree Celsius. The growth or toxin formation is, however, slow and can take days or weeks. Prolonged refrigeration, for example vacuum packs of meat or fish, pate and soft cheeses, may be a hazard. The nearer a refrigerator operates to 1 degree Celsius, the better. Consideration should be given to the siting of the fridge, construction and design, defrosting and cleaning, operating temperatures, hot food, contamination, packaging and rotation of food, staff responsibilities, storage life, chilled display cabinets, monitoring temperatures, and lastly the selection of units. And I mention here of Clostridium botulinum type E. This can produce a neurotoxin as low as 3.3 degrees Celsius. Freezing inhibits enzyme reactions and reduces available moisture. For example, the AW of ice at minus 15 degrees Celsius is 0.85. Freezing food also kills some bacteria, including some pathogens and parasites. For example, Cysticercus bovis, also Trichinella in pork, and some parasites in fish. That's why under the health and safety legislation, all fish in this country is to be used as a raw product. For sushi, for example, must be frozen for at least 36 hours and then defrosted before it's used. Spores and toxins are relatively unaffected by freezing and storage. If foods are quick frozen, ice crystals are smaller than if the food is frozen slowly. This ensures the best quality of the food due to reduced cell damage and less drip-on thawing. Domestic freezing takes up to 72 hours. Methods of freezing include tunnel, fluidized bed. Some vegetables are individually quick frozen or IQF, and this is minus 40 degrees Celsius in 3 to 8 minutes. Another one is air blast. This is the commonest method. Trolleys of a box product are pushed through a continuous belt type operation, usually a spiral belt, and the temperature is reduced from or down to minus 30 degrees Celsius to minus 40 degrees Celsius in 2 to 3 hours. Another system is called cryogenic. This is where we use liquid nitrogen and the product is sprayed or dipped. Using this technique, the ice crystals are very small, and when the product is defrosted, there's less cell damage and drip. Another system is plate freezing. This is where food is packed in flat cartons, and these are placed between narrow metal shelves with a circulating refrigerant inside, and the temperature is taken down to minus 33 degrees Celsius in 2 to 3 hours. Another system is pellet freeze, where liquids and semi-solids are frozen in pellet form. And lastly, gyro freeze. Temperatures are taken down to around minus 60 degrees Celsius for a relatively short time. The reduction of water activity or moisture in food. Most bacteria require an AW of 0.95 to multiply, but may survive in dried foods for many years. For example, Salmonella napoli in chocolate and Salmonella ealing in dried baby milk. In fact, there was a recent case where Cadbury's chocolate caused Salmonella food poisoning, and that was caused by a variant called Salmonella montevideo. The thing about Salmonella, the second part of the word is usually derived from where it was discovered. For example, you've got Salmonella napoli, Ealing, Montevideo. That's where the Salmonella variant of that type was discovered. Spores may also survive and germinate when water or milk are added, for example Bacillus cereus. Xerophilic organisms, mainly molds and yeast, tolerate lower levels of AW, for example as low as 0.62. Dehydration is the reduction of available water, AW. Most dried products are around 0.6 AW. It's essential that packaging is airtight. Methods of dehydration include sun drying, for example with fruit, vegetables, milk, eggs, fish and meat, and this is usually achieved in the warmer countries. Hot air, this is more likely to destroy protein and is a greater flavour change in the food, and the foods are more difficult to reconstitute. There's tunnel drying, fluidized bed drying, roller drying and spray drying. Also warm air or accelerated freeze drying. Food is frozen and subjected to a vacuum to remove water from food by a process called sublimation. Heat is applied, ice is converted to steam, the texture and the quality of the food is less impaired, and it rehydrates more readily. Advantages of dehydration include lighter weight, storage is relatively cheap, and there's a relatively long shelf life. Disadvantages include a greater care is required in packaging, non-enzymic browning may occur, there's a significant change in flavour possible, there's a lowering of nutritional value, it affects the vitamins, spores survive, there are changes in quality, rehydration damages cell walls and increases decomposition rate, and chemical changes are possible. To minimise chemical changes, keep moisture level as low as possible, minimise the level of reducing sugars, use clean blanching water, use sulfur dioxide as a preservative, store at low levels of relative humidity. Next we've got fermentation, which increases the acidity or decreases the pH. Lactic acid produced in food by lactic acid bacteria. It reduces the AW and the pH. For example, salami, yogurt and soy sauce. The use of salt. This has been used since ancient times. The effectiveness depends on the concentration, and it reduces available water by osmosis. The salt is added by either rubbing into the surface of meat, by soaking in a brine solution, by injecting into meat as an ingredient, or by layering, for example with fish. Another product is the addition of sugar. Sucrose acts similarly to salt but requires 6 times the concentration. Molds and yeast can survive up to 60% of sucrose. If artificial sweeteners are used as an alternative, care must be taken. For example, botulism in yogurt. Sugar is an energy source for nitrite reducing bacteria. And just to finish off there, Staphylococcus aureus is salt tolerant, so that can withstand a lot of salt. It's called a halophile. Curing is the use of salt, sugar and other chemicals, for example nitrites and nitrates, and is mainly used for meat and fish. Sodium nitrite stabilizes the hemoglobin and the microglobin to retain a pink or red colour. It's used in pasteurized hams to combat the production of botulinum toxin. Care must be taken when using nitrites direct, as they can react with amines to form nitrous amines, and some are carcinogenic. Curing of bacon. The traditional way of curing bacon, the sides are chilled for at least 24 hours and injected with brine. They are packed in vats, covered in salt or brine solution, removed after 4 to 5 days and stacked for at least 7 days at between 7 to 9 degrees Celsius. Rapid curing is a process using arterial pumping, multiple injection and a tumble method. Smoking, this is where food is suspended over smouldering hardwood, for example ash, beech, applewood, oak. It may be used after curing or brining. It adds flavour. It dries food at the surface, where the temperature goes up to 71 degrees Celsius. Chemicals in the wood include phenols, aldehydes and creosoles. It destroys most non-sporing vegetative bacteria. Antioxidant is produced on the fat. Hot smoking products must be treated as high-risk food. Clostridium botulinum spores and mold may survive, therefore you need to store the product at less than 3 degrees Celsius. Cold smoking of fish, for example smoked salmon. The product is gutted, washed, salted, brined, smoked for 6 hours at 27 degrees Celsius, and then 15 to 20 minutes at 33 degrees Celsius. The fish or the product that's been cold smoked must be treated as raw. Store smoked products under refrigeration. A wide range of chemicals are used in the UK, mainly to prevent microbial spoilage, chemical deterioration and mould growth. Additives are strictly controlled by legislation. Maximum permitted levels are usually specified. In the UK, a positive list is utilised. Only those specified are to be used. The modern trend is to reduce chemical preservatives and use more natural preservatives like salt, sugar and vinegar. Extreme caution should be used when using chemicals, so that any risk to health is dealt with effectively. Examples of chemical used includes benzoic acid. This occurs naturally in some foods such as cranberries, normally used in high acid foods to inhibit molds and yeast. Excess benzoate can cause an unpleasant burning taste. Sorbic acid, potassium sorbate, only effective in high acid foods to inhibit molds and yeasts, used in hard cheese, bread, jam, syrup and cakes. Sulfur dioxide, sulfites, used as a gas, liquid or as a salt. It's an antioxidant. It inhibits molds and bacteria, used in wines, beers, fruit juice, sausages, cider, etc. Acetic acid lowers the pH below normal growth range. Some yeasts and molds are unaffected. Pickling uses acetic acid and or vinegar. The pH must be below 4.5 throughout. Sodium and calcium propionate, active in low acid foods such as bread, cheese and grain, etc. Antibiotics, these are strictly controlled. Niacin is sometimes used in cheese and canned foods. Niacin is destroyed by the stomach, overcoming drug-resistant problems. Controlled or modified atmospheres by the use of gas flushing. The normal composition of air is 20% oxygen, less than 1% carbon dioxide and 79% nitrogen. If we use a 10% CO2 concentration, this provides 70-day shelf life for chilled beef. 2 to 10% CO2 is used for the storage of fruits. Possible example, reduced amount of oxygen, higher nitrogen and carbon dioxide. Therefore bacterial growth slows and this affects both spoilage and pathogens. Mold growth is slowed, enzyme action is reduced and oxidation is reduced. Vacuum packaging is when all air has been removed and it prevents oxidative rancidity. Chilled storage is essential for cooked meats and fish below 5 degrees Celsius. It controls strict aerobes. Risk the growth of anaerobes, especially germination of Clostridium botulinum spores and the growth of vegetated organisms. If shelf life is greater than 10 days, additional controls are required in addition to storage temperatures. For example, heat to 90 degrees Celsius for 10 minutes or equivalent. Make sure that pH is less than 5 throughout the food, or that the salt level is 3.5% and the water availability less than 0.97. Bacterial counts can increase from 1,000 to 10 million after, for example, 39 days at 2 degrees Celsius, 20 days at 5 degrees Celsius, or 7 days at 15 degrees Celsius. So you can see it's a time temperature graph. And lastly, irradiation as a preservation process. It's called the cold pasteurization process. Food is subject to ionizing radiation, for example gamma rays from cobalt-60, or X-rays, or high-speed electrons. The maximum dose is 10 kGy to limit adverse effects. Food commonly irradiated includes chicken, fish, fruit, onions, potatoes, spices and strawberries. UK only plant licence for the irradiation of spices. Advantages include the shelf life is extended, it destroys vegetative bacteria, molds, yeasts and insects, it inhibits sprouting, for example of potatoes, delays fruit ripening and inactivates parasites. There is no temperature rise, products such as fish remain fresh, packages and frozen foods may be treated. The main disadvantages include enzymes are not deactivated, encourages oxidative rancidity in fatty foods, long-term effects on consumer are unknown, there's some nutritional loss, particularly vitamins, absence of tests to determine if food is irradiated, some undesirable flavour changes, for example with dairy products, may lead to premature softening in some fruits. Spores and toxins are not destroyed at the levels used. Type E Clostridium botulinum could produce toxins more rapidly than in non-irradiated fish. Food of poor bacteriological quality and shelf life may be irradiated to disguise the fact. Complacency, reduction in hygiene standards as staff are relying on the irradiation. Spoilage organisms are easily destroyed, therefore less competition for pathogens if food is contaminated. And more dangerous mutants of pathogens may be formed. And this really is to show you where gamma rays come in the light spectrum. Now the KGYs are angstrom units, and 1 angstrom unit equals 1/10 millionth of a millimetre. So you've got on there gamma rays are at the bottom of the scale, between 0.01 and 1.4 angstrom units. Then moving to the right we've got X-rays between 0.06 and up to 1000. Ultraviolet between 136 and 4000. The visible spectrum of light between 4000 and 8000. And infrared between 8000 and 4 times 10 to the 6 angstrom units. So let's have a look at the key points of lecture 8. Spoilage commences immediately after harvesting, slaughter or fishing. Therefore, food such as meat or fish must be refrigerated immediately after harvesting. Spoilage may be due to enzymes, bacteria, molds, yeasts or pests. Rancidity or oxidation, physical damage, bruising or ice formation, or tainting are types of spoilage. The rate of spoilage varies with temperature, number of organisms, type of food, competition, acid-alkali balance, available water and the atmosphere. Preservation slows spoilage and the multiplication of pathogenic organisms. Low and high temperatures, dehydration, chemicals, controlled atmospheres, botulinum cooking canning, which is 121 degrees Celsius for 3 minutes, core temperature, are all types of food preservation systems.